Episode 131 of the State of the Old Republic podcast was originally recorded on March 10th, 2025. It's the State of the Old Republic podcast. This week on the show, Game Update 761 is here, and that means the start of Galactic Seasons 8, Rising Powers. Get ready to go and run some Uprisings with a twist, thanks to everyone's favorite galactic con man, Zaiken. Also this week, I'll have an update where things stand with character modernization. Let's just say it's very much a work in progress, but we'll soon be able to check out the changes on the PTS. And finally, if Galactic Seasons 8 weren't enough to keep you busy, there is an abundance of other activities, including the Spring Abundance Festival, Dynamic Encounter achievements, and achievements for completing the R4 Anomaly operation. And with that, it's time to make the jump to lightspeed.
And cue the moron.
Welcome to episode 131 of the State of the Old Republic podcast. I'm your host, Ted, and as you heard in the opening, I have a great show lined up for you today. Well, I don't even know where to begin. Belated Happy New Year? Where have I been? You know what? Forget all that. Let's just dive right into things today. It's March, which means quarter one for the year is wrapping up, and we're about to get our first update of the year for Star Wars The Old Republic. 761 Rising Powers is here. It's got Galactic Seasons 8 and a whole lot more. Game Update 761 goes live this week, and the big feature is the start of Galactic Seasons 8, Rising Powers. Now in Galactic Season 7, the Bounty Brokers event ran for the whole season, and we saw the return of the Dark vs. Light bosses. This time around, the season will focus on another existing piece of content, Uprisings. If you're unfamiliar with Uprisings, they were introduced in Knights of the Eternal Throne. They're basically mini flashpoints that were built for a group of 4 players, but designed to be role agnostic, although I'm not sure how true that plays out in the hardest modes, but that's the gist of it. So Uprisings are existing content, and they are group content, but it's coming with a little bit of a twist this time, as our old pal Zaiken is going to have something special for us to help us get through these Uprisings. Here's what Eric Musco had to say about it during the 761 live stream.
So Zaiken's gonna hit you up on the comm link, and he's gonna be like, hey, Zerka has handed me some amazing new experimental but totally safe technology. And you, as, a galactically famous, powerful individual, you seem like the best person to test out this technology for me.
That tracks.
Right? And so that's what's gonna happen. So effectively what they are mechanically is throughout the Galactic Season, you'll be able to earn Zerka experimental combat enhancers. What they are is you will be able to go into an Uprising. They only work in Uprisings. You're gonna be able to use this buff on yourself. It's one of 3 buffs that you'll get randomly, which I'll show you what they are in a second. And they're going to make you powerful. And they're amazing.
So what exactly are these 3 buffs? The first one is called the Destruction Overload buff. If you have this one, every 5th enemy that's defeated will explode, causing AoE damage to other nearby enemies. The second one is called Zerka Combat Drones, and as the name suggests, combat drones will assist you in taking down enemies. The third buff is the Unstable Radiation Field buff. This is a point-blank AoE that is dropped at your feet and does persistent damage to everything around you. That one looks fun, and I don't know how big the area is underneath you, but hopefully it's large enough so that it's beneficial for both melee and ranged players. One thing that was hinted at in the live stream is that because these buffs are experimental, there is a small chance they could have some negative effects from time to time. We'll have to wait and see. Because they are tying Uprisings to the Galactic Season, some adjustments had to be made. First, Uprisings will be available to all players. That means subscribers, free-to-play, preferred, everyone. Uprisings will also be made available for characters starting at level 10, and these changes are permanent and will remain in place after the season ends. Each Uprising is available in Story, Veteran, and Master mode. All modes can be accessed through the terminals in the combat training section of the fleet. Veteran mode Uprisings are also available through the activities window for players who are looking to group with others. As far as soloing them goes, I'm not sure how that will work moving forward. There were a few that could be soloed in Story or Veteran mode. I don't know if that will still be the case, especially now that we'll have these buffs and you can run them at low levels. It might be different now. Now, like previous seasons, there will be 2 rewards tracks, one for subscribers and one for non-subscribers. And remember, subscribers will get the rewards from both tracks. For Season 8, the rewards will be Drum and Kos and Coruscant themed, and there will be some items inspired by the Andor series and the Skeleton Crew series on Disney+. You can expect the usual fare here. There are new titles, stronghold labels, and decorations. There are new dies. There's a new mini pet. There are creature mounts and mechanical mounts. There are armor sets and weapon sets. And for the first time, we're getting 2 new hairstyles as rewards. One will come from the rewards track, and the other is a reward for completing the Season 8 meta achievement. And the achievements for the season are Testing for Power 1 through 5, which is essentially getting to level 100 on the rewards track. Combat Enhanced, which is earned by completing all Rising Powers achievements. Season 8 Objective Master, which is done by completing the weekly season objectives during the season. There's Tying Up Loose Ends, which is eliminate targets affected by the side effects of the Zerka Experimental Combat Enhancer. And Powerful Forces, defeat each Dark vs. Light world boss during the season. That's right, the Dark vs. Light bosses will remain as objectives for Galactic Seasons 8. That means you can continue to earn and spend DVL tokens if you need them. And it should be noted that during the last week of the season, all of the Dark vs. Light bosses will be available to kill, which could make for an interesting final week of the season. If you want details on all the rewards and objectives, be sure to check out the official Galactic Seasons 8 article on swotor.com. And that's really all there is to know about Galactic Seasons 8. Yes, it's another reuse of existing content, and that's just where this game is right now. Would it have been nice if they could have given us a couple of new Uprisings, maybe a Droman Kos and Coruscant Uprising tied to the Galactic Seasons story? That would have been awesome. Galactic Seasons 8 Rising Powers starts on March 11th. Unless you've been hiding in a spaceship that's parked inside a space slug that's living inside an asteroid, you are well aware of the character modernization updates that went live in Game Update 7.6. If you recall, before going live, the changes went up on the PTS, and our reaction was something like this.
Apprentice, what have you done to me?
We looked at the changes, compared our PTS characters to our live characters, gave tons and tons of feedback. 7.6 launched, and when we logged onto the live servers, our reaction was still,
Apprentice, what have you done to me? You betrayed me! You ruined me!
After the launch, Eric Musco made a huge post on the forums where he wrote, 7.6 was a huge step forward for us and the culmination of an art and tech effort to modernize our characters for the first time since our game's inception, which is amazing. But that huge step is also only our first. We aren't done. Our modernization efforts mean subsequent changes can and will continue. While I appreciate that what we're seeing are the first steps in a longer journey, I think they pulled off the highway a little too soon here and posted on Instagram some overly enthusiastic pictures from the rest stop, leading us viewers to infer that the journey was mostly done. Now I realize that our characters and companions are personal to each of us. I don't want to downplay anyone's disappointment with how things turned out. For me, it was a mixed bag. My chiss all looked terrible, but I had other characters that I thought looked better, and some that didn't look all that different, and some that were a little off. As I said, for me, it was a mixed bag. In his post, Eric did mention that they tried to address some things programmatically. In other words, they tweaked numbers and sliders and settings, but they left the underlying artwork alone. And unfortunately, it did not have the desired effect of making things better. And since the launch of 7.6, we haven't seen any changes, but they are coming. Here's Eric Musco talking about their plans on the 7.6.1 live stream.
So let's talk about where we are. So our priorities after 7.6 were effectively these three things. We wanted to rework the source assets, the art itself, to kind of focus on the wrinkles and muscle definition. And for those of you that didn't read, I know I posted a very, very long post, so feel free to go back and read lots of words if you want to, but the very short version is, in 7.6 we did focus on programmatic solutions around some of these things, and we kind of wanted to pull back from that so that the artists themselves could be a little bit more specific in how they address those things. So that's kind of what that first bullet is. Second thing is the neckline seam. So you'll notice on some of your characters, you can see that there's like a line around the neckline. So we want to rework some of the textures so that becomes less noticeable. And last but not least, on vibrantly colored species, especially things like chiss, we wanted to improve the textures on them as well. So those are kind of the three things that were our highest priorities coming off of 7.6 that we wanted to focus on.
They showed some current and in-progress images, and they did look pretty good. The important thing to note about the changes is that the artists are now going in and drawing and coloring and doing whatever it is that artists do. I have no idea. And Eric did go on to say that while the artists do their thing, there are some additional programmatic changes in the works.
So we want to work on improving the lighting across the game so that it matches what's in cinematics, because you may not realize this, some of you might. There's actually a different lighting between what's in cinematics and what's in the rest of the game. And we're trying to bring parity between those two things. Second thing is kind of very similar, is that we want to try to improve lighting in the preview window, because just like the example I gave on the previous bullet, there's a lack of parity between what's in the preview window and what's in the rest of the game. So you might preview something and then equip it and then look at it in the game and go, well, that's not necessarily what it looked like in the preview window. And so we want to try to bring parity across the entire game so that when you see something, regardless of where you're seeing it, it generally looks as consistent as possible. That's not always going to be entirely true, but that's our goal, is to generally make things as consistent as possible across the game.
So a lot of changes are in progress, and like before, we will get an opportunity to test them out on the PTS. A special PTS dedicated to character modernization changes will go up sometime after 7.6.1 goes live, probably later this month. And hopefully this time they won't rush through the process, and they'll continue to iterate on the PTS until the changes are truly ready. And I think we all understand it may never be perfect. And believe me, I'm not a fan of letting perfection be the enemy of the good, but what we got in 7.6 was not good. In the end, I think they'll get it right, and I think they'll get it to a point where our characters will look the same, but better. Star Wars Celebration will be held in Japan this April, and Star Wars The Old Republic will have a short segment during this year's Celebration livestream. I have no idea what it'll be. I do remember that for Star Wars Celebration Chicago, they did announce the Onslaught expansion. And it practically goes without saying that we are long overdue for news about a new expansion. I don't know if we'll get an expansion announcement, but there will be a Celebration-themed log-on reward and a subscriber reward, so we're not getting nothing here. But back to the idea of an expansion. Legacy of the Sith is now more than 3 years old, and it is without question the longest running expansion in the history of Star Wars The Old Republic. We are traveling in the unknown regions of the Star Wars universe right now. Now, even if we don't get an expansion announcement at Star Wars Celebration, that doesn't rule out the possibility that we still might get an expansion in 2025. Now, believe it or not, going all the way back to 2023, the release cadence for Star Wars The Old Republic has been quite regular. We start the year with a minor update in Q1, followed by a major update in Q2, and then another minor update in Q3, and then we finish the year off with a major update in Q4. As I said, this has been the release cycle going back to 2023, and it was continued in 2024, and now 2025 is starting off the same way with 761 in Q1 and most likely Game Update 7.7 in Q2. In fact, during the 761 live stream, Eric Musco hinted at some of the things we would see in Game Update 7.7, and here's what he had to say.
Right after that, we will put character modernization on PTS. As I called out, that is not going to be 7.7 PTS, but our plan is that 7.7's PTS is also going to happen really shortly thereafter as well. We're hoping, I don't know, I'll make up some timelines, so don't hold me to this. You will anyway, I'm saying it out loud right now. Like late March, early April or something, with master mode of XR-53 Replicator. So that's coming in 7.7. So we're going to try to get that on PTS as soon as possible after 761 goes out the door. So you can look for that to go on PTS. Also in 7.7, we're looking at some more plans to expand dynamic encounters to some other places that we're very excited about. And then beyond that, we're obviously continuing development of stories. So stay tuned for more details when we communicate more about what's going on with that.
If 7.7 is in Q2, then it stands to reason that in Q3 we would get 7.7.1, which then brings us to Q4 and the big holiday update. And I think for Q4, we're either going to get 7.8 or we're going to get 8.0. And based on the current release cycle of major and minor updates, Q4 is certainly a good fit for 8.0. Of course, that doesn't mean they can't deviate from their schedule and release a major update in Q1 of 2026, but it would seem a little bit weird to have back-to-back major story-driven updates. Because remember, that's what separates the major updates from the minor updates. The major updates are story updates. And yes, we're way behind in story right now, presumably because of the voice actors strike that is still going on, and Broadsword isn't able to record the dialogue needed to release the story. So we may end up getting the 7.6 story and the 7.7 story all at the same time. But I mentioned story because I think that really is the key determinant as to whether or not we just get a major update or whether or not we move towards a new expansion. I think story is what's going to drive that, and since we haven't seen the 7.6 story, it's hard to tell where things are going right now and whether or not 7.7 seems like it will be the conclusion to the story or if there really is going to be a continuation in 7.8. I just don't feel like I have enough information to form a strong opinion about where we are, but just based on how they've been releasing these updates, if we don't get 8.0 in Q4, then I worry that it would be released in Q2 of 2026, which is more than a year from now, which I think is a long time to have to wait for a brand new expansion. The good news is we are going to continue to get updates and new features for Star Wars The Old Republic throughout 2025. And as for that Q4 major update, all I can say for sure about it is, one way or another, the game update number is going to have an 8 in it. Well, Galactic Seasons 8 is certainly enough to keep you logging in each week, but there are other things you can do as part of Game Update 761. The Spring Abundance Festival is back. The event takes place on Dantooine. You can go there and participate in a variety of activities, such as baking and eating pies, You can earn lots of rewards such as weapons, mounts, armor sets, and more. And there are new rewards that you can get this year, including mini pets and decorations. The Spring Abundance Festival will run from March 11th through April 8th. If you have the Bessie Basilisk Companion or are working towards it, there are 4 new Bessie variants that will be added to a new vendor at Lane Vizsla's lab. You can turn in prototype data and role-specific currencies to help fund the Curator's project in order to obtain the new variants. And starting in 7.6.1, you can find new Bessie training modules for completing dynamic encounters on Hoth and Tatooine. And speaking of dynamic encounters, there are some new achievements you can earn for completing specific encounters on Hoth and Tatooine. And speaking of achievements, there is a new timed run achievement for the R4 Anomaly operation. If you complete the operation in veteran mode within 40 minutes, you will earn the following rewards: the Anomalously Skilled achievement, the Anomalously Skilled character title, and the Wings of Nyrot mount, which will be granted to the character that completes the run. As you can see, there are lots of other things to do that aren't Galactic Seasons 8. Few other things to tell you about before I go. First, with the launch of 7.6.1, there will be a new Twitch drop. If you watch 4 hours of live SWTOR content on Twitch, you will earn the AC-10 Disruptor mount. Just remember to make sure that your Twitch account and SWTOR accounts are linked. There are some new items coming to the cartel market, including Coruscant and Droman Khas themed utility bundles. These are things like mailboxes, cargo holds, and GTN kiosks. And I have to say, both look nice, but the Droman Khas ones look really nice, and I may have to get a set of those and put them everywhere. There is a new Master the Fight bundle. This one is called the Storm Edition. Like previous bundles, you get a mount, dies, cartel coins, and subscription time. The mount will have the speed boost ability and mini pet functionality. And speaking of that speed boost, it will also be available to subscribers as a new character legacy perk, improved speeder rank 6. Well, that's all I think I've got for you today. So with that, let me push my own speed boost button here and tell you that that's the state of the Old Republic for today. Let me cut in the sublight engines and cue the music and congratulate you on surviving another half hour listening to episode 131 of the State of the Old Republic podcast. I'm your host, Ted, and I thank you for tuning in. You can find this podcast on Buzzsprout and iTunes and wherever else you find your podcasts. I'm also back to putting these up on YouTube. You can listen to the show directly from the show's site, which is sotorpodcast.com. And there is an RSS feed where you can subscribe to the podcast directly. If you have a question for the show, you can email me at sotorpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, remember the Sith code, cake is a lie.